Going to talk about what we're doing here today, which is doing a deep dive into football, and we're going to be talking about the round ball. Our context here, of course, is this fantastic weekend around us, and we've heard from all sorts of rugby people already, but it's the round ball we're getting into. We're going to do, as it says on the can, a delve into the diverse football landscape in North Asia, predominantly, the unique opportunities and challenges it presents for marketing and promotion. So we're going to be asking where football's at, where it's going, what tech is doing, what changes in consumption habits are going to be doing as far as this is concerned, sponsorship. And we're represented by a league in LaLiga. We have the sponsors, you've just heard from Erica, and we have the marketing guru who's at the far end there. Let's just introduce them formally. Erica, I'm not going to do the same thing for you again, because thanks to that brilliant session with Rebecca, we know all about you and who you are and what you do. But next to you, you've got Patrick Murphy, who's the CEO Asia Football Group, the exclusive commercial partner, of course, of the Asian Football Confederation, a multi-billion-dollar contract. We're going to lean into his Asian knowledge, but obviously he also marketed UEFA Champions League football in the past, worked in broadcasting, and has probably forgotten more about sports and football marketing than any of us will ever know. And sitting next to me, I'm delighted to say we have Marta Díaz, International Business Development for LaLiga, based here now, but international development for it. And also, crucially, for our purposes, you've been helping drive LaLiga's transformative strategic move as they position themselves at the forefront of innovation and technology, which is something I think we'll be talking about. Patrick, kick us off. Let's go with the big picture here in terms of a room that understandably understands and knows what football means to Asia, particularly North Asia. When I ask you what excites you most when you think about football in this part of the world, what would you say?
I mean, obviously you need to look at it, and you should look at it in different ways. I mean, if you look at the actual popularity of football, whether it's European football or Asian football, it's very, very strong, and it's getting stronger. So that's very, very encouraging. The second thing is, if you look at the actual football pyramid in Asia, you look at national team, you look at club football, you look at women's football, for example, there are a lot of very positive things happening. If you like, at the top end of the pyramid, the big Asian national teams are doing very well. They're doing very well at the World Cups, the recent World Cups. They've played amazing football at the recent Asian Cup in Doha. We've got a club infrastructure which I think is developing very, very well. Could develop more, I believe, but is developing very well. And women's football is actually moving in a very good direction too. So I think there's a lot of positive things, but it's such a huge region and a huge area. It's you know, there's a lot of details in each of those particular areas.
Great stuff, and I'm going to break it down into, you know, Erica and Marta, your specific engagements in terms of this region shortly. But again, let's stay with the big picture. I'll keep resting you for a moment there, Erica, just get your breath back a bit. Marta, tell me, when you think about what this region means to LaLiga, but also to you in terms of football broadly, what excites you?
I think the growth excites me. You can see there's an increasing popularity and fan base around football in Asia. And I think this is an opportunity to reach and engage with an audience that is diverse, which we see as a good thing, that it's so diverse, and the passion, right? And that opens up a lot of opportunity there.
Absolutely, right. Okay, Erica, now, so it could be anecdotal. I mean, you know, we know what you've done around the region. We've heard this incredible career you've had going back to multi-sports in China, obviously, to start off with. But particularly given the role that you have these days with Liverpool especially, what's caught your eye?
Well, I think the thing, you know, before I joined, one of the obvious questions that some of you in the room may have as well was, why Liverpool? You know, Standard Chartered is obviously a global bank, but so much of our business is in Asia between Hong Kong and Singapore. And I think if we look at Liverpool being one of the top global clubs, we know there are a number of fans in the room. But if we look at their fan base, so much of their fan base is in the same place as our footprint: Asia, Middle East, and Africa. I think the latest figures I saw was just in North Asia alone, 50 million fans of the club. That's incredible for a global team. So I think that's what really excites me about the opportunity for us and Liverpool is that's just the start. There are so many untapped fans in this part of the world still to reach.
And so many exciting ways of engaging with them as well, which is going to be something that I think we'll be dipping into right now. You know, the amazing thing about football is that we've also heard already today about so many of these multi-layered collaborative attempts that could be involving the investment wings of governments, certainly the private sector, and all manner of associations, leagues, and clubs. And collaboration is something that I'd be really interested in hearing from you guys about right now, because later on we're going to be talking a bit about the way that our identity, or your identity in each of your specific roles, appears to be changing very rapidly as you meet the new demands of the market out there. So let's talk about this trend towards ambitious, multi-layered, collaborative projects that involve you guys in various ways. If you could lay out an example or two. Marta, I think I'll start with you, because I know LaLiga has been very busy in moving into an area that I find fascinating in terms of the projects you take on.
Yeah, I mean, we know football is more than football, right? It's a power of change. La Liga has that as its claim, the power of football. And I think, for example, most of the projects we're involved in are collaborative projects. I think in one of the panels before, they were speaking about it's not just about one-hit wonder, right? It's about leaving a legacy and about projects that are long-term and that impact the community and the society. Because also in this way you get to reach a new audience, right? There's people that like football, but others that are more impacted by these projects that affect the community and society. And normally, the governments there and the local clubs, league, the local associations have already this in their agenda, so it only makes sense that if you go and want to leave an impact long term, that you collaborate with these governments, with associations. I can give you some examples of the...
Please do, please do.
Just an example could be we've worked, with international youth tournaments where we bring under 16 kids here to play, and the government is involved, because this also helps tourism for the region and also to develop football, but not just around football. As football is growing, there's also a need for professional people in the field, right? I bet Kaitag, when they open up, they're probably going to need people that are professionals to work on the stadium, and that might be a challenge. We have also some partnerships with, here, for example, Hong Kong, with the Metropolitan University to develop massive programs of sports marketing, of law, and along this line.
And we'll talk about China a little bit later on as well, because I know you have a La Liga experience and you have things happening there. So we'll come back to that in a bit. Patrick, when you hear this, it's interesting from the inside out, as it were. We have overseas leagues that come here and, you're seeing an amazing job, which we'll detail even further in terms of what they do to collaborate locally on the ground. But ultimately, their goal is still to promote their own product, which is it's based overseas. This has been very often politicized in this part of the world. But of course, there's also the other side to it, which is the way that Asia can benefit from these engagements. Can you give us any examples of collaborations that you've been particularly excited about in recent times?
Well, I think I've kind of worked at it at all the different levels. I'm doing 8 years here in the 90s with News Corp, and then doing the Champions League, selling the Champions League rights here for 12 years. Then basically running a lot of the European exhibition football out here, and now more laterally working with the AFC. I think there's a role for everything. I'm not one of those people that says, we shouldn't have European football here and it's damaging Asian football. I don't believe that at all, because I think it actually helps to really drive the interest and the excitement around it. But what actually needs to happen is there needs to be also a very strong local development of football. And really what that means, apart from the grassroots, which is obvious, you need to have a very strong club infrastructure. So the one thing, especially I'm talking now mostly about the eastern side of the continent, what I really would like to see happen is just further development of the national leagues and the club business. Because as I said before, the national team game is actually in quite good shape, both in terms of how it's viewed, its audience levels, the passion behind it. But the club game is inconsistent, let's put it that way, throughout East Asia. And that's the area that I think really should be developed.
Yeah, it's a really great point that you make, because we have an example, and a shining example, in Japan's J-League, which has been around since the 90s, that is just magnificent in every aspect of what they do. And that, of course, has seen the arrival of some of the most... If you've never seen footage of Japanese high school football competitions, get onto YouTube and have a look at it, because it's just stunning what happens there. And it trickles down absolutely everywhere. That is the model that you really aspire to, I think, across Asia. So tell me a little bit, Erica, about sort of, on-the-ground stuff. Marta mentioned a couple. She was very modest, because I've come up with about half a dozen things that you guys have been doing, particularly around this part of the world. I'll come back to that. But what about with your Standard Chartered Liverpool sponsorship?
Well, I think looking at the Liverpool partnership, but also football in general, one of the things that we're very proud of is that we're a major supporter of the Hong Kong Soccer Sevens, which are coming up. So that's one thing. But on the Liverpool side, I think one of the things that is probably worth mentioning is the partnership we have with LFC and then LFC and Swire Group. So, as I said before, you might wonder why we sponsor Liverpool. It's so far away. It's in Anfield, an incredible football ground and temple, if you will. But 99% of our clients and consumers will never have the chance to get to Anfield. So how do we bring that experience, and how do we get people to understand why Liverpool Football Club is different from any other club on the planet? And so one of the activations we're doing with LFC and Swire is bringing a taste of Anfield to them. So last week in Guangzhou, in one of the Swire Mall properties, we had the Anfield experience. That's now traveling to Chengdu, and later this year it'll be here in Hong Kong. So letting consumers and fans have the opportunity to experience a mini Anfield and what makes it so special.
That comment about fans here not having the opportunity, by and large, to get anywhere near the teams and the players that they idolize is something that resonates so much with me. In much of the recent broadcast work that I've done, I've always advocated to stop having people from overseas just talking at the Asian audience and instead just getting the audience as close as possible. And if that just simply means using footage that's coming on the day of fans arriving at the ground, the in-stadium experience, the ability to use interviews to just show the Asian superstars, and in LaLiga, you've had a great recent tradition of getting Asian players. You want to be just celebrating their success and making sure that you bring what they do as close to Asian viewers as possible, and vice versa, right?
Yeah, and also as Patrick was mentioning, it's really important to also develop the local club. We don't come here wanting to be the first club they follow. We want them to follow first their local club, right, and help it grow, because it just helps everyone. As you were mentioning, we've seen with the development of international youth tournaments and the development of grassroots that it does have a result, right? The rising Asian stars we've had from Korea, Japan, China, Skangin Lee, Kubo, Wu Lei, and we've seen the impact that does have on our business also. And we see that more and more. There's going to be rising Asian stars that also come play abroad.
And I think, Patrick, we've seen you laid out your incredible career earlier on. I think we've, wherever we've come to it from, we've witnessed this. We knew way back when, ahead of a lot of people, that in Asia it's about the idol worship. It's about the fans, the heroes, fans, supporting their heroes, following them, absolutely adoring players sometimes, switching allegiances from clubs if a player moved or even a coach moved. And that's something I think that must be at the heart of what you guys do as well. You've got to build those legends and you've got to support them and engage with them, haven't you?
Yeah, it's tricky for us in the sense that essentially the AFC, their stakers are the member associations and to a certain extent the clubs and leagues as well, rather than the individual players, right? But of course, from a marketing point of view, we know that building those local heroes is absolutely critical. And as you say, in Asia, probably more so than anywhere else I've worked, the passion is actually driven by the player, not necessarily a loyalty to the club itself. So it is different.
And that's something, at Standard Chartered, we don't have individual ambassador deals, but the past brands I've worked for always have. And I think that's a great place where brands can really make an impact because, if you look at Sun and Tottenham, you have brands that you wouldn't have imagined getting involved. Toomey does so much with him in this part of the world, and it's had a great impact on their business. So I think that that's something for the brands in the room to really think about is you may not get involved in a team deal, but there are some great athlete deals that can really have business impact right away.
And it's funny you mentioned Sun because in my most recent broadcast work, I discovered that the minute we showed anything involving Sun, we were, cross-club allegiance. Fans just watched it. Didn't matter if they didn't support Tottenham Hotspur whatsoever.
We need more of it, right? What's happened in Japan and Korea has been amazing. What I think we probably would all like to see in China, that hasn't quite happened yet. But there's Indonesia, there's Vietnam, there's Thailand. These are countries which have got the highest level of passion actually for football. And I think that if their domestic leagues, their domestic infrastructure can be grown, then you can grow those local heroes in those countries, and it can become even more big, wider, more passionate, more beneficial. So that's what we need to see. We need to see that hard work that's been done in Japan and Korea actually extending into the rest of the region.
Yeah, and I think also, as Erica was saying, this is why it's important to be more than just a football brand, right? To be an aspirational brand. We also brought some legends last summer, Luis Garcia, Casillas Morientes, and to Shenzhen, and also a day for Hong Kong. And speaking to the people that had came to the fan activation event, some of them didn't know who Luis Garcia was. You know, he's an old generation player, but they were there because they recognized LaLiga, they saw the entertainment we had. They were throwing gifts to the legends, which was fun at the moment, not so fun shipping it back to them because they did want the presents sent to them. And so, yeah, it's important.
And they only need to look at Luis Garcia's Instagram to realize he's a lot of fun and he does some cool stuff. So it doesn't matter if it was one ghost goal, as they say a few years ago. Guys, I'm going to flip things around a bit here because I was going to ask you about changing consumer habits and preferences, but I think we've kind of addressed some of that right now. What interests me, particularly given what you just said about this aspirational entity angle, I just want to quote from something. Sorry, this is actually a Bundesliga German example, but not that long ago, the Bundesliga club, BVB, Borussia Dortmund, in partnership with MIT, launched an online course in transformational technologies, AI, blockchain, robotics. So what does that make them? And what does that mean is happening right now? Are traditional stakeholder roles, whatever you may be doing in this space, changing? And what I mean by that, you know, are you becoming something different? Are you having to turn into an entity that shares knowledge, data, skills? It's certainly, Erica, something that I think you'd be able to relate to, whether it's from your experience or what you're just seeing happening broadly. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the role, clubs are having to change so much, whether it's in the role of data and analytics, whether it's in the roles of nutrition, whether it's in the roles of, you know, leadership and management. There's so much change happening from what traditional clubs would be. I'm gonna jump ahead from a question that I know is coming, but on the data and analytics side, I mean, one of the things that I found so interesting is, as you may have heard, there's going to be a change of management in the manager at Liverpool, but those of you who also know me know that I usually would have like an inside scoop or at least a theory, and in this time I really don't. But what I can say is there may be an announcement soon, and it might be a surprise. But the thing that
You heard it here first.
Don't any of you dare leave now. Okay, right.
But the thing that I find so interesting is how the club is going about the process of using data and analytics to decide who the next coach should be. And that to me is really, really interesting. I mean, on the player side, absolutely get that. But even on the coaching side, the role that the data is playing for the club is something, you know, I would have never thought of coming in from the outside.
I'm going to be a little controversial, maybe provocative here. When you are a league that's a European league that's not the Premier League, you know, you've got a competitive environment. You know, it's a difficult environment for you. Does that mean that you have to become creative in establishing the strengths, the powers, the knowledge, the ability you have to actually make your brand work in a way that is not a direct competition for broadcast rights and eyeballs?
Yeah, I mean, for the Premier League, right, it's right that it started its internationalization project a long time ago, right? So when LaLiga started we had to catch up to it, right, very fast. That's why we also have delegates all over the world. But this also, what it meant is that, as we talked about, in order to grow quickly, right, you need to be an ecosystem. We don't think of ourselves anymore as a sport entity. We think we're an entertainment entity. So we need to hit all those targets, right? And it's not just about, of course, club support is at its core, but you need to develop other businesses because in order to reach everyone, for example, at LaLiga, as I was just saying, we have the educational branch, right, with our business school, but we also do restaurants, LaLiga 29s. We've developed concerts. We also are doing consulting in infrastructure, you know, with the Real Madrid Stadium. We help with that and other clubs. So we've had to develop our I will say, our menu of products to say in a way, and that is an opportunity because now even speaking to people here in Hong Kong, you can see what their need is, and you can connect it to a project or a club or something we can help with.
Yeah, I love that. That's you're evolving as an audience is evolving, and you just have to make sure that you're crossing over at the right point. Patrick, I just want to go back to something you said earlier on, and this stuck with me. You spoke about needing to catch up. You talked about club level and structure. Let's fold this back onto something we heard about earlier on today, something hugely important, and that's the Greater Bay Area and Kai-Tak Sports Park and everything that's happening here. We've seen what's happened in the west of Asia, right? And we've seen this extraordinary sort of, suction towards that part of the world of major events, right? So if we have to be honest with ourselves and say, right, there's some catching up to do, would you not argue that actually the infrastructure looks like it's been put in place for that to happen in this part of the world?
Yeah, I actually didn't want to mention West Asia at all. I thought I'd stay away from it. But I mean, obviously, if you look at our industry in the region of Asia at the moment, what's happening in the West is actually much more exciting, to be brutally honest, than what's happening in the East. There's more happening there. Obviously, Saudi Arabia is playing a big part to that, but also some other countries. I mean, the infrastructure in the Bay Area clearly is going to be very strong. If you're talking about hardware, if you're talking about population, if you're talking about interest in football, all of these things are really, really strong. But then how do you actually utilize that? How do you turn that hardware into regular passion, regular attendances? It's difficult to do. You can bring European clubs to play every summer like I used to do, but that's, I don't think, going to have any real big, strong, long-term effect. You can try and develop the Hong Kong Football League itself, but the reality of the market here is it's obviously very small, especially the television market is very small, so it's going to be hard to do that. So maybe the best thing to do is actually to look at some sort of cross-border football league, for example, and build up something like that, because if you've got 90 million people, Marta will know very well from the commercial side of our business, that's a very significant business that you can make media revenue from and sponsorship revenue from. But that's quite political because they're two separate football entities, but maybe that would be the way to go.
Well, I've poked you there, haven't I, a little bit? But I mean, let's be, as Jasper said earlier on, this is a future-facing forum, this one. So, we've spoken about collaborations, we've spoken about different platforms, we've spoken about food and pop music going hand in hand with football. So, as we come to the last couple of minutes of our panel, why don't we do this? Why don't we look ahead and speak about what we'd like to see happen, what we think the future will be? Erica, I mean, if you could, look ahead and say the way ahead in terms of what you do, in terms of sport, but football specifically, broadly, what would you like to see happen in North Asia and this part of the world in the coming years?
I'd like to see Liverpool bring their summer tour to Hong Kong next year.
Which would do very well, by the way, and would sell out, I can assure you of that.
Yeah, and having been across and been very lucky to have had a little look around Kai-Tak Sports Park, you'd be in for a very, very special festival experience.
Well, who knows? Maybe it'll be one of the first events out at the new stadium.
There you go. You didn't give us clock, but you've given us a little something there, haven't you? That's nice. Marta, just as we start to round things up here, what's immediately on the horizon for you guys?
Erica stole my answer, where we hope to bring Spanish clubs here to play. But as we've spoken about today, we want to do more than this, right? Than just bring football here to have an event. We want to do projects that are long term, that help grassroots, and that can help us develop football here. Yeah.
Okay, Patrick, last word with you then. So, positive, bullish?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, there's two areas that I think we're certainly going to really focus on. One is developing the club game in Asia, because as I say, the national team, particularly men's senior national team, is actually very strong. So on the club side, we're actually going to create a new structure for club football, a 3-tier club structure, and we're going to create this end-of-season final tournament, which will feature the top 8 clubs. And hopefully we can kind of add more razzmatazz to that type of tournament and therefore build the interest of the club competitions in Asia. And the other big emphasis that we've got is going to be on women's football. We're going to start a Women's Asian Champions League. It's going to start in September with the top 12 teams. Top 5 out of the 20 teams in the world, women's teams in the world, come from Asia. There's only 2 from the men. So the Asian women are much better, shall we say, than the men. So we see an awful lot of opportunity there, and we really want to encourage that, and we're going to start with the Champions League in September.
Absolutely brilliant. Football in this part of the world, exciting, evolving, fabulous, dynamic space. We're privileged to be in it, and I'm sure you guys want to be or already are already. Patrick, Erica, Marta, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody.